Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another PS4 and PS5 jailbreak news update. We haven't really talked much about the PS5 so far, and I haven't done one of these updates in over 2 weeks. So we have quite a few interesting things for the PS4, but I'm going to go to PS5 first since I haven't talked about it in quite some time. And that's mainly because not a lot of development has really been happening on PS5. People like Lightning Mods and Sistro are primarily looking at PS4 right now because of all of the new exploits and developments that are going on over there. So yeah, PS5 has been quite quiet recently, although there are a few things that I want to talk about here in this video. Obviously, one of the things I keep getting asked about the most is the talk at TyphoonCon that Theflow was doing on the 30th of May, and obviously we haven't really heard much about that. Now, the reason for that is that there hasn't been a recording of this talk posted anywhere online that I've seen. So it did take place. We do have confirmation from TyphoonCon. We got a post on X when it was happening that showed a picture of the talk in progress, and you can actually even see a camera rig set up there as well, which looks like they were recording it perhaps. So not sure why it hasn't been released yet, or if they're going to release a recording, and hopefully maybe there's other people in the audience who may have recorded it. If not, perhaps Theflow will release the slides of the talk and maybe a detailed summary about what was discussed. That is what we're hoping for, but until then, we can't really kind of speculate much on what was going on in the talk until we have more information. So that is why you haven't really heard anything about this TyphoonCon talk so far. Now, we did get this image that some people were getting excited about because it shows the comparison between PS4 and PS5. So hey, maybe he is talking about PS5 here, although this could just be Theflow explaining why he targeted PS4 instead of PS5. Because of all the extra security measures that are implemented on the PS5. That looks essentially like what he was talking about here, but we won't know, of course, until we get a recording or the slides released or a detailed breakdown of what was discussed. That's what we're hoping for, and then we'll know more at that stage. So a bit disappointing there that we haven't got a recording. So next, we also got the release of this web server from John Tornblum. He's been working on this for a while. It was originally called the Homebrew Loader. And it's an interesting way of loading Homebrew using a different technique of loading it through the web browser instead of creating like a Homebrew app or just using a PS4 Homebrew app that targets the PS5 through backwards compatibility, which is primarily what all the Homebrew is on PS5 right now. So this is pretty interesting. The setup for it is a little bit involved. You do need to go to the releases section here. You can download all of these zip files. Each zip file represents like a different Homebrew app. So there is a bunch of different ones here that you can test with. There's also a payload file and a package file. So you download the package file, copy it to a USB drive, you install it with the debug settings package installer, and you just go on IdleSauce's exploit host, and the option should already be added in there. There is the web server payload. If that one isn't updated, which it wasn't when I tried it, you can just download the actual payload.zip file from the GitHub from John Tornblum, and then run the elf loader option in the exploit host, and then you can send the payload over on port 9021 using something like netcat GUI. That will get it loaded. Once it's loaded, if you go into the media section, you'll have the Homebrew loader in there from the package that you installed, and if you select that option, that will actually open up the Homebrew loader, this web browser based version of a Homebrew loader. That's how you get the Homebrew loader up and running. But then in order to add Homebrew apps to run, and there's a few example ones that John Tornblum has added in here in the GitHub repo, there's this Devolution X, which apparently I think it's a port of the original Diablo game that you can actually run on your PS5, which is pretty interesting. There's also a media player. There's a couple of radio stations, Swedish radio stations that you can run. And then there's also an NES emulator with a couple of test ROMs in there that you can try. So in order to run these, you are going to need to FTP to the PS5 and then go into the data folder, create a new directory called Homebrew. And then inside that Homebrew directory, you then want to create a directory for each of the Homebrew apps. So FFplay, Devolution X, Lake SNES, etc. You create a folder with all of those names, and then you just extract the contents of those zip files into those corresponding folders. So once you have that all complete, then when you go back on the Homebrew loader, it should give you the full menu of all of the different Homebrew apps that you have in that Homebrew folder on the hard drive, and you can select whichever one you want to run. Most of them are just little test ones that are not really that significant, like the media player just runs a test pattern video in a loop, and then there's the radio stations that you can tune into, and the SNES emulator, which just has 2 games that you can try and run. The one that's most impressive to me is definitely the Diablo port that you can run on the PS5. So if we try and run that, you just press X, you run it, and then it goes through a bunch of code. And once it's fully set up, you've got the option to press circle, which will back out of the browser and go straight into that Homebrew application that's now running. And now you can enjoy Diablo on your PS5. So yeah, pretty unique Homebrew setup. And this has existed in like a beta form for a while, but we haven't really had a proper release of it. This is the first proper release that we have here from John Tornblum. And yeah, it's pretty interesting, pretty unique way of loading Homebrew. So we'll see what this turns into in the future, if we get any other more impressive, more interesting Homebrew apps that get added in here. So yeah, anyway, that is what we've got there for the PS5. We also got the release from Moore1 for the PS5, a user mod, which allows you to add custom themes and customize the home menu of your PS5. So I'll also leave that one linked below. So those are kind of the main changes. Again, not a lot really happening on the PS5 right now. Most of the focus is on the PS4. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is right now. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the PS4 then and talk about some of those updates. So the big one, of course, is going to be that we've just had the release of GoldHEN version 2.4 beta17.3. So a new beta build of GoldHEN has been released for the PS4, specifically targeting the new exploit, of course. So this one adds support for 9.60. A lot of people waiting on 9.60 because they have that WebKit exploit, the PS3 WebKit exploit that works on that firmware. They don't want to give that exploit up by updating to 11.0. So if you are in that camp, you can now run GoldHEN 2.4 beta17.3 and get it running on 9.60. And of course, it also supports all of the other firmwares that were already previously supported in previous versions. So you're all good there. We also have the improved bin loader server, more payloads supported. This should now allow us to run the Linux loader payloads, which were previously not working with the bin loader in B17.2 and lower. However, now you should be able to run these Linux payloads using B17.3. So the Linux payloads that were ported by EchoStretch, you can now run them on your PS4 up to 11.0. So that is great. If you're waiting for Linux for all this time, Linux is now available. You should be able to load it here. And obviously I'll make a tutorial on it once I get done with all the other videos I've got to do at the moment. But yeah, so next we've got improved kernel log server, so network disconnection support, as well as changed network server configuration to declarative. So the big noticeable thing about the network change is that the services like FTP and the bin loader, and presumably the Klog server, normally when you disconnect from the internet, they would stop working. And when you reconnect to the internet, you would have to go back into your GoldHEN settings and then disable the FTP server and re-enable it again. The same with the bin loader server, disable and re-enable in order to get them working again. That should be automatic now. So whenever you get a disconnect on your PS4 and you have the FTP server and the bin loader running, they will shut down automatically. And then when your PS4 regains a network connection, those services should automatically restart, and you'll be able to access them again without having to manually turn them off and back on again in order to fix them. So that is another good change that has been added in this version. So 9.60 support, improved bin loader server, you can load the Linux payloads, more payloads are supported, as well as, of course, the network change with the bin loader server, FTP server, presumably the Klog server as well, to automatically relaunch them whenever the network disconnects and reconnects. So those are the changes there in GoldHEN. So for setting up the new version of GoldHEN, all you need to do, of course, is download the zip file and then extract the stage 2 loader for your firmware version and load that into pppwn GUI 1.8 or whatever your favorite loader is. So load that stage 2 payload in there. And then, of course, you want to put the GoldHEN payload itself on the root of a USB drive, plug that into your PS4, and then load the exploit. That will load the new version of GoldHEN from the USB. It will then replace the one on the hard drive with the new version. We also got the release of regular hen, normal homebrew enabler, not GoldHEN, regular hen from EchoStretch. So EchoStretch has set up this project to port the older hen version over to more firmwares. This is just temporary so that people who are still on firmwares that are not supported yet, and maybe you can't update because you have a broken Blu-ray drive. So if you're on like 9.50 or 10.50 or 10.70 or any of these firmwares that still doesn't have GoldHEN support, you can, in the meantime, use EchoStretch's port of regular hen, which isn't going to have all of the great features that GoldHEN has, but it will at least allow you to like run your fake packages and run the package installer to install Homebrew and all of that stuff. So, you know, it will give you more functionality. It's something that you can use in the meantime while you wait for GoldHEN to be ported. So if you are on one of these firmwares that's not supported and you want to try and run this regular version of Hen, then all you need to do is download the one that corresponds to your firmware version from EchoStretch's GitHub repo and put that payload on the root of a USB drive and call it payload.bin. So rename it to payload.bin if it's any other name, and then plug that USB into your PS4. So for the stage 2 loader, Lightning Mods 1 seems to be recommended for this version of Hen compared to Sistro's. So you can download the stage 2 loader from Lightning Mods GitHub repo, which will be linked below. So you download that one, copy that into pppwn GUI 1.8 or whichever your favorite loader is, copy that stage 2 payload in there, and then use that to run the exploit. And that should then load the payload from the USB, which will then load this other version of Hen. So you'll still get a lot of functionality with this. There may be some issues because it was all ported. I don't think EchoStretch tested every single firmware version. So there might be some issues with crashing with this payload, depending on what firmware you're on. So yeah, it's not necessarily going to be perfectly stable, but it is an alternative until GoldHEN supports your firmware version. So yeah, anyway, that is basically it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And once again, I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.